It's the greatest sound in AFL football when the final siren goes at the MCG on the last Saturday in September, and as we saw just then, it was the Sydney Swans who finished in front by 10 points in what was one of the cracking grand finals in recent times, boys. It was just a fantastic game, how it ebbed and flowed all game. We had some special moments, we had some great stories. I was on the probably the Hawks all the time, I must admit, but I thought I'd jump ship. But it was one of the great grand finals, and it was fantastic to see the Swans get up there premiers.
Oh, it was a fantastic game of footy. We're sitting there with 5 minutes to go. We didn't know which way it was going to fall. We even thought a draw at some stage as well with a couple of minutes to go. But Gerard, the excitement surrounding that, and good on the Sydney Swans. They've had a fantastic season.
Well, you guys were talking about system versus talent, and the system was just superb for the Sydney Swans. But all systems need that thing that just makes special teams, and that is just drive and work rate. And both sides produced it, Kingy, but the Swans just produced it that little bit more.
Oh, the key moments. They won the key moments, didn't they? In the last quarter, game was in the balance at three-quarter time. We knew there was a breeze to one end, but really, for me, Dennis Pagan used to always say desire is the greatest motivating force there is. 110 tackles.
That's the thing.
And we've had 33 between O'Keefe, McVeigh and Jack. And that's leadership for
Well, that was one of the real key numbers. And we'll go through them as we go through the Power 8 post-game show. But that was one of the real key numbers that the Swans actually did win. They were beaten in many facets of the game. But I've got to give this back to you, Gerard, because in all seriousness, you must be really proud for an ex-Swans player. I mean, you were part of the group of players that went up and laid the foundations. And now I think we look at the Sydney Swans and we'd like to put them up as real ambassadors for the AFL, and they're a fantastic club, they've got fantastic characters, and they just never bottom out. And they regenerated this list in around the 2009 draft and trade period, and they're an elite team, and they richly deserve this grand final.
They're an elite club, I think, Lynchy. It's difficult when you're in our role. You've played the neutral ball a lot, but today it wasn't too hard to get emotional and get too hard. It's great to be a supporter for a change, and it was just great to support the Swans. Thought they were gone 3 times, and we always do when Sydney get behind, but they just keep on coming back.
It was more than 3 times, Jerry. You had a busy day today.
Very emotional day. The phone bill might be right up there, I would have thought.
I'd say that it was a pleasure to sit next to the great man today, just to ride the emotions.
I actually called my own plasterer.
Boys, let's have a look at the quarter-by-quarter scores from the big game today. And it was at quarter time where we saw the Hawks get out to that 19-point lead. Then after that, there was 8 unanswered goals from quarter time for the Swans, and they led halfway through that third term by 28 points. Then it flipped around again. The Hawks hit the front with 7 goals to 1 until early in the fourth quarter. And then the last 4 goals of the game, it was to the Sydney Swans to run out by 10 points, 14-7, 91 to 11-15, 81. Some great goals, an important Jetta goal from outside 50, the Malcheski goal, which was a big bomb to get them home. Lance Franklin had a fantastic game today. Great contest with Ted Richards, kicked 3. Bruce Gunston and Hale 2 goals apiece. And then the great spread that we saw with the Sydney Swans and throughout the year, Malcheski, McVeigh, Jack, Morton 2 very important goals, Kennedy from the midfield, and Hanbury O'Keefe with the most possessions on the ground for the Sydney Swans. And Sewell, he dominated the game with 33 possessions.
Terry, that's correct that all the midfielders have got good numbers there. But the reality for me is the half-back line of Sydney Swans was unbelievable all day. Under enormous pressure, the inside 50s will tell a story. The young man, Alex Johnson, has had an amazing day.
He has.
A career highlight for sure.
Had a couple of smothers that we were really keen on.
And he won the ball back 10 times across half-back. Now, we coming into the game thought Richards is going to have his hand full with Franklin.
And he did.
Can Grundy get off and assist? And it wasn't either of those 2 guys. It was the young fella who would have been coming in questioning not whether he belongs at this level, but whether he belongs at the pointy end of a grand final.
And you want it to revert into scores, and that's where they were able then to get it through the middle of the ground at times. But conversion, you see there for Sydney, was fantastic. Across the day, even their set shots, 5 goals 2 to the Hawks, 3 goals 6 with conversion across the day. It's an important aspect of games. We speak about it all year, but in the biggest day of the year, they had to convert, and they did, the Swans.
Is there going to be a question mark on the kicking possession style of Hawthorn under the Swans' pressure? They returned 53%. That's their lowest ever kicking efficiency. Now, not a great day for kicking, swirly win, but the pressure. I mean, the tackle count, 110 tackles for the Swans. It's the 11th best total ever. They were relentless.
Well, that's what you need to do against the Hawthorn side, because they use the ball so well. And, yeah, very difficult to hit targets in windy conditions. But, just all power to the Sydney Swans. They tackled and tackled and tackled, and it was incredible, the ruthless attack on the ball and the opposition.
You mentioned the efforts of Alex Johnson. There was a one-on-one battle with Matner and Birchall late in the last quarter. I mean, they would have been absolutely a spent force. And Matner's ability to just find something and neutralise that was one of the match-winning highlights. And everybody's going to have their moments. Well, for that, and I've got a dozen, but that was one that just stands out to me at the moment.
The other thing for me, and it's been a problem for the Hawks in the recent month of football, is being able to halt momentum. They kicked a block of 8 goals in a row, Sydney, and then a block of 4 goals in a row at the end. When the game was sliding, they really struggled. The half-time bell saved them. They were in all sorts of trouble with the game sliding out of their grip, and late in the game, when it slid again, they had no answers, really.
Which is unusual when you have such a consistent dominance from centre clearances. Despite the dominance, they still got goals scored against them in blocks.
The Kieran Jack goal late in that game there, tell you what that was. Mitch Morton, who kicked 2 goals in the second quarter. Mitch Morton was a 1-on-2 contest deep in the forward line. He did enough to get to the contest, make a spoil and bring it to the ground and give time for Jack to actually get to the contest. We see often in a 2-on-1 situation, the defender goes third up and takes the mark, rebounds the other way. Morton did enough to make a contest, which probably wasn't what he built his game around in past years, but he's found a little niche there and played some really significant roles in the second quarter and in the last.
Hats off to Mitch Morton. Last week, 7 tackles. Made him keep his spot on the side. Today, a couple of goals and a couple of just one-on-one efforts or 2-on-1 efforts, and he was the singular. And he played his role, and he's got a medal to show for it.
Injured at the start of the year, worked his way, kicked 70-plus goals in the reserve competition, finds his spot late in the season and holds it.
Would have thought halfway through the season he was no chance. What about going into the game? We spoke about pre-game and we spoke about earlier this morning the injuries that the Sydney Swans were taking in. Mumford went in with a hamstring. Inevitably, he didn't have an impact on the game and was subbed out of the game.
No, I thought he was better than that. I thought he battled hard and he ran out of steam, but I thought he had an impact.
No, well, maybe I'm a bit harsh on him, but he certainly didn't have the impact that we know that Mumford can have on it. And it was a good sub to get Parker into the game. Richards rebounded really well, had a suspect ankle, rebounded really well after a difficult first quarter. And then Adam Goodes. Now, we know he's obviously injured a PCL, a posterior cruciate ligament, but he played that role again. Didn't have the power off the mark, but found space and used the ball extremely well when he needed to.
Oh, it's a champion performance by Adam Goodes, under the pump, pretty good early. Had an injury, had a little bit of a flat spot. When the game was there to be won, he found a couple of special efforts, and what a track record he's now got.
It is unbelievable. But you talked about Richards. I thought at half-time it was nearly at the stage where they were looking to make a move and give Grundy the opportunity against Buddy, because he just looked likely, Buddy, all day to threaten to kick 2 or 3 in a hurry, and he won some really pivotal one-on-ones in that last quarter when the game was wrestling back towards the Hawks.
Yeah, and you know what the move was in some ways? LRT to the last line. It just seemed to settle Richards a little bit because he knew that he had LRT behind him to come third man in. He took a couple of contested marks, deep LRT, to really halt the momentum of the Hawks in the third quarter.
LRT and Mike Pyke.
There you go.
Well, significant. With, I suppose, Mumford probably carrying that bit of an injury, Mike Pyke played a significant role going into the middle of the ground, probably played more minutes in the centre than he has played for a long time. And LRT, for so long, and it's wrong now, he should never be underrated, but he's probably one of those spare parts player that you can play in any position. He has to play almost every week because you just don't know where someone's going to go down and you can move that man into.
Well, when the walls upstairs were getting holes drilled in them, LRT under the pump, he took a couple of really important marks, didn't make a mistake, whether he was forward or back. He was excellent.
His nickname has to be Sally's, doesn't it? Because he just fills the gaps every week.
Let's have a look at the match stats for today's game, and we'll see that Hawthorn were very good in many facets of the game, just couldn't get the job done. Disposals was +3, so pretty close there. Now, marks inside 50, that's a good win, +4 for the Hawks. Contested possessions dominated by the Hawthorn Football Club, and we go down inside 50s. That is a significant win, +18, and also time in forward half, +22. But the thing was that every time that the Hawthorn Footy Club had the ball, the tackles from the Sydney Swans, +26, and it was more than that. It was the perceived pressure that built over the course of the game.
Hard to believe that the Swans won with those numbers on clearances, Kingy.
That is an unbelievable stat sheet there. The centre clearances, more particularly, were the issue, and I just can't believe that we're looking at the Hawthorn forward line now. Because when you look at those numbers, there's only one reason you can come up with the result that we've got is that the Hawthorn forward line hasn't functioned. We've got Roughead who's kicked 0 goals, 3. Rioli hasn't kicked a goal, strangely enough. We've got
Bruce and Puopolo.
You know, Puopolo sadly out of form the last month of football. We've talked about their mix of goal kickers all year, and on the biggest day it's failed them.
It stretched into the midfield as well, Lynchy, when you look at, they only had 1 goal from Isaac Smith, where the Swans had 2 from Kennedy, Jack and McVeigh. 6 goals in the midfield today for Sydney.
I reckon if you go down the list and you look at how many guys played really well for Hawthorn at their best, Sewell, without doubt, he was in the best few players on the ground. Buddy Franklin was very close. Sam Mitchell was in and out of the game. It was a fair game for Mitchell, not a great game. And it's difficult to find too many others.
And they made big errors too. The Clinton Young failed to get the ball over the line just to concede a point. Gifted Kieran Jack a goal, and it was great follow-up and great endeavour, but the reality is it should have gone across and kept the 5-point buffer to the Hawks. He fails to do that, the game's squared and sliding fast, and I think that really took the oxygen out of the Hawthorn Football Club, and they struggled to get momentum back.
Absolutely. We better grab a break on the Powerade post-game show. When we come back, we'll dissect one of the great grand finals in recent times. Welcome back to the Powerade post-game show after one of the cracking grand finals in recent times. The Swans have won by 10 points over the Hawks, and the Powerade poll question for this week is, can the Swans go back-to-back? What do you reckon, boys? It's very early. It is very early. Jump online, poweradepole.com, and put in your vote.
We haven't had a crack to Powerade yet, and you want to celebrate next year.
I've probably had too many Powerades. I'll tell you what, they're a fantastic product, but I just might change variety later and might have a little beer.
Strangely enough, Matty Campbell will tell us later in the program, sportsbet.com.au will probably have the Hawks clear-cut favourites just after they've been beaten in the grand final.
Yes, and a talking point coming out of this game would be missed opportunities. We've discussed the missed opportunities that Hawthorn had, but in recent grand finals we've seen a few teams miss their opportunity. They've dominated possession, dominated inside 50s and scoring shots, but just haven't got the job done on the day. And we see Geelong in 08, plus 19 inside 50s, scoring shots plus 9 and lost. St Kilda in 09, similar sort of numbers where you're plus 16, plus 3 as the scoring shots and lost. Collingwood in 10, plus 27, plus 5 scoring shots and a draw, and then obviously today, and they will feel that they've lost the game. I mean, a very great effort from the Sydney Swans, but we can't deny it. The Hawks had their chances.
They did, but in 08, they took it off Geelong, who had their chances. So they've been on the positive side of it, and now obviously on the negative side of it with the Swans going.
It's always going to be a factor today. The wind was going to impact if you didn't take your chances in front of goal, even to the point where Gunston, who has rarely missed, and the ball was going straight through. In many ways, it wasn't his fault, but the ball hits the post, and they go away from having a 3-goal margin. What a magnificent time it must be for that man.
King, you know this man really well.
Yeah, win for the good guys. It really is. I mean, he's just a terrific fella. I know the players really love what he's about. He drives pretty hard standards, but he's a very fair man. You play the Swans brand of football and you'll play under John Longmire forever, and they really enjoy that. I know the players really enjoy the fairness of the system up there.
I noticed Craig Holden, the ball bloke who just went through the back. He's been there,
for a long time.
He's been there since 1982. He's been there as a top player. He's been there as a development officer, a runner, a strapper. He has done everything. He's now involved in the administration. There's a lot of great Australian rules football people up in that club, but Longmire is today the face.
Do you think the coaches were onto something when they voted him Coach of the Year prior to the grand final?
I reckon they were.
But we were lucky enough to speak to John Longmire after his preliminary final win here in the studio. And just the levelness across that man was outstanding, considering the excitement that must have been down deep and the fact that he's just about to play in a grand final.
Tell us a bit more about him.
Oh, look, he's a pretty humble man. He doesn't talk a lot of football. He's very calm, very measured, great family man. I'll tell you one thing, he's really tight with his friends. You know, he loves Alistair Clarkson, John Blakey, these guys.
He was a manager about 8 years ago.
He worked for IMG and was just a very simple guy, just an honest guy, and loved the farm, loves farming, loves country life, and has just made a success out of everything he's touched. He's a different guy.
Was there a perception there a few years ago that he may have missed the boat as far as an assistant coach going to the next level? Because he was in for there was talk about the North Melbourne job and the St Kilda job, certainly.
Only to those that didn't know him.
Yeah.
I think, only to those that didn't really understand who he was. And I think that's the hardest part when you're judging assistant coaches, can they become senior coaches? Unless you really know them, then it's really hard to throw people into those roles.
He has said that Paul Roos has been an amazing influence on him, but it seems to me the way he coaches has got a lot of Dennis Pagan. It's about process, doesn't change a lot, didn't make a lot of dramatic changes. I think the biggest change you pointed out was LRT from one end of the ground to the other, but it's just about consistency of effort.
He trusts his players, and I think that at the end of the day he says, this is your role. You know, it may not work for periods of the game, and we want to talk about that because I thought the momentum in the game today was unbelievable. Let's have a look at the scorers. The Hawks kicked the first 3, then the Swans kicked the next 8, the Hawks kicked the next 5, the Swans kicked 1, the Hawks kicked 2, and then the Swans finished with 4. So it was cashing in when you had momentum.
Was it to do with the wind?
It may have been to do with the wind, but I just thought the game was that tight all day that little moments in the game swung and kept things rolling in favour of whichever team had the advantage.
Let's talk about some of the individuals on the ground, and not just the best players, but what Sydney has done over the years. They've been able to so-called recycle players. Ted Richards is a fantastic example. But let's chat about Rhys Shaw. Missed the opportunity with Collingwood with a premiership loss, and has gone up there, and he cannot speak more highly of a football club than the Sydney Swans, and he's played a pivotal role over the last 1 or 2 years in the build-up to this grand final win.
Yeah, and I think the Swans can only speak highly of Rhys Shaw. He made one little mistake that I can remember. The ball went a little bit long, but he was superb. He got them running. To me, when I look at the numbers of the Swans, again, Jono, just a really even performance across the board. They had a couple of guys a bit better and they had a couple of guys a bit under. But there was just a fanaticism of the tackling and the pressure across the board.
It was excellent. You go through their disposals. They only had 2 players, Mumford and Parker, who only played half a quarter, had under 10 disposals for the game. So that just shows the evenness across the board. And most of the Swans players were between 11 disposals and 21. So there's your core group right there. That's where you get the win. That's where you grind the win from.
What about another man who's got himself off the deck on a couple of occasions, Nick Malchaski? He's had the Lars reconstruction.
Big victory for Lars,
isn't it? Fantastic, it is. And another player who's got himself back up there to win I think, second flag for Nick, it might have been. I'm not sure, actually, whether it's 1 or 2. But once again, a great story.
Yeah, I think he played in 06. He might have played in 2 grand finals. That's his first win. He was just about gone 2 years ago. There's a lot of people writing his obituary as a player. And yet, under the medicos in Sydney, they kept having faith in him, and he kept on having faith in himself. A few knee issues, but well, he's now a premiership
Kicks
player.
the last goal, the sealer as well.
What about one of the young stars, Daniel Hannebery? But just an incredible player. We spoke when they were getting beat. He went back with a flight of the ball, and I think in front of David Hale got crunched in a great marking contest.
Quarter.
Just seemed to set the scene when things weren't going well, and they needed a lift from someone, and it was one of their youngsters.
Twice he showed desperation today, Gerard, going back with the flight and to get up on that podium and get his hands on that cup. He was fantastic. I think he's tougher than what people give him credit for. He's an absolute goer. He's a classic Sydney Swans player.
Yeah.
You know, he's in and under. When the hard work's there to be done, he'll do it. And when you need to finish, he's capable of finishing.
Craig Bird's another one.
Yep.
You know, cut from the same cloth, and very much just a role player for Sydney. There'll be a lot of hugs in that Sydney Swans room, though, and I reckon one of our men will be right down there with them. Here's Adam Goods. And I think you'll see a couple of familiar faces there with the Premiership Cup, the second one for here, and there he is.
That man's supposed to be back here for the post-game show. I think
No chance, Lynchy.
I think we might scratch him. I think you're in for the whole hour, you guys. But Paul Roos obviously has played a significant role at the football club, involved in those 2 grand finals. And you can imagine it'd be a very emotional time. Although he hasn't got an official role, he's still very much part of the Bloods there.
Well, he is, and he does work in the development, I suppose, coming through now with the younger guys. He'll hang his hat on that anyway. But look, it is great. He was good enough to win one as a coach, and then hand that baton over, and now still be a part of it without question.
Sam Reid's a player, I reckon, won't get a lot of credit today, but I reckon he played a really pivotal role. And when the game was there for the winning, he stepped up. He had a couple of really important individual performances, a couple of big marks, a couple of knock-ons, a couple of smothers. He played his role today.
Look, I think when you look at the stat sheet and judge players off a stat sheet, it's a false economy.
Yeah.
I mean, Lewis Jetta was as influential as anyone today, and he finishes with 12 disposals. But when they got going or needed a spark, he was the man. Shaw's the same. Their numbers won't read like midfield numbers, but the game was played on counterpunch, and Sydney were just too good for them. And you spoke about the kicking efficiency. They went at 66% by foot, and that's a structural thing, and that's a bravery and dare to run reward for the players across half back. And you know, Jetta and these guys were terrific.
And Josh Kennedy. I mean, fantastic story. Probably not wanted, just couldn't fit in at Hawthorn, but he's gone up there. Probably had a slowish start to the game. But in the end, he's had the 26 disposals and just works really hard. 15 of those were contested possessions. And that, once again, a fantastic story. Like his grandfather and his father, now he's played a really good role in a premiership team.
Yeah, and having a look at John Senior, it was pretty clear that his heart is still with Hawthorn. I think he was more devastated, but his grandson was absolutely superb. Kingy, the half-back line for the Swans you've rightly given great praise to, but they just didn't get the rebound off their half-back line, Hawthorn. Birchall, magnificent season, all-Australian. And when he had the ball a couple of times, he looked as if he was going to generate the victory, but just not often enough.
I thought they could have done a little bit more with Birchall. It's very easy to be critical, sit back here and on the couch upstairs and be critical from the distance. But I thought he needed to get himself into the game, and they needed to get him into the game, maybe put him in the middle. I thought at the start of the game, they maybe should have rolled the dice with a Burgoyne in the middle. They always go to Burgoyne when they need a lift or when the game's in the balance. And they needed to take the game on, try and get some ascendancy if they could on the scoreboard. And they did have that early in terms of the numbers, but not quite there. Birchall's an interesting discussion, I think. Is he going to become a gun, or is he a gun half-back flanker, or does he need to become a superstar wingman?
Up there when you were back there.
He was around. There were plenty of them that were there in 1982, and they've been there the whole way through, and they'll be just absolutely pumped. And the motto when Richard Collis took over the club as president was 2 cities, 1 team, and the marriage has been absolutely superb. It's a Sydney Swans football club, got great history here in South Melbourne, and there's a lot of support down here, but it's a great win for Sydney.
And the man that played a significant role in that marriage was the premiership coach from 2005 and the Grand Final in 2006. Paul Roos hasn't quite made it back here, but you're down in the rooms, Roosy. Must be a sensational feeling, and congratulations to you and other Sydney Swans officials down there.
Yeah, really exciting, Al, as you well know. I mean, the Grand Final is like nothing else, and what an outstanding game of football it was. Just live here at the ground, just the ebbs and flow. It looked like the Swans were out early, then they came back, I think kicked 8 goals in a row. Hawthorn looked down and gone, then Swans looked... I mean, what an amazing contest, particularly the senior players at the Sydney Swans Football Club. Their ability to get over the line, but there were some great stories, as there always is.
And one of those great stories, Roosie, is Mike Pyke. And I suppose with the injury concerns for Mumford, Mike Pyke's gone in and spent a big chunk of the game in the ruck. And a fantastic story to come from the other side of the world, from a foreign sport, and we hear about Folau and we hear about Hunt. This is a great story from rugby union in Canada, via France, and now a premiership player at the MCG.
Yeah, I just spoke to his mum on the way in, Al. I mean, it's just fantastic. She sort of thanked the club and thanked me for... Yeah, there's obviously a lot of people involved in that. Michael Quinlan was the first guy to actually receive the tape, sent it up to us because we had a relationship with Ty Kennelly, and that was his manager. So what Pikey did today was outstanding. Just his ability to take the key marks, the contested marks at the right time of the game was just exceptional, and everyone's raving about Pikey's role as the players come back out.
Came to you and said he was pretty keen to get back to Melbourne for various personal reasons. You were going to help him find a home, given that you had so much respect for him as a person, and yet it didn't quite happen. Amazingly now, the club he was going to go to was Hawthorn, yet he stayed. He's the best player on the ground, Norm Smith medalist, and he's got another premiership.
Yeah, look, Ryan was pretty keen to get down to Melbourne for family reasons, and we said, look, if we can do the deal, we will. And we spoke to a number of clubs, Hawthorn being one of them, but nothing really eventuated. Yeah. Then Ryan came back, we re-signed him. And interestingly enough, I think Ryan made the comment to me at the time he'd love to get more involved and heavily in the midfield rotations, and we did that. And what a key moment for the footy club for him to be able to do that and play such a significant role today. I think just the size and strength really tended to worry the Hawks at different times. You know, the big body of Kennedy, the big body of O'Keefe certainly had a significant role to play today.
Well, thanks, Roosie. We'll let you go for a couple of minutes. See if you can get us an interview, because I reckon your chances of coming back here are slim. So if you can get an interview for us, we'll let you off the hook.
Will do. Thanks, mate.
No
Good on you,
worries.
boys. I'll be back soon.
No, of course you will. There is no chance Paul Roos is going to be back here, but as long as he gets a couple of good interviews
Who
for
would
us.
you like to talk to?
I'd like to talk to someone like the Reece Shaw or the Mike Pyke, and I mean someone that's just got in and didn't think they were going to get the opportunities, come from a long way back. There's no better story than Mike Pyke, I don't think.
A lot of hard luck stories in football, a lot of kicks in the behind through the course of your career, and for the individual player, for their family, for coaching groups, for the whole fan base.
Yep.
But this half an hour, this hour right now is something you never forget. You cherish this more than any. It is a time where you can just hug the person that's helped you the most, and whether that can be a coach, it can be an opportunity given by a recruiting staff or person. There's always one person that you just can't wait to get to say thanks for everything and I appreciate it.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. There'll be a bloke up in Sydney watching who was the original Sydney Swans physiotherapist, and he ended up my best mate in Sydney, and there would be those bonds where you just share that with that person for 10 minutes. He might have been your strapper or your rubber, Jono, and he may not be a bloke on the ground, but there's always an individual at the club outside of the playing group.
And you mentioned the strappers and the trainers. All players have their routines, and it normally starts with them, because when you walk into the room, they're the first people you see all the time. So that's the thing, and you know that with the Sydney Swans, they're just a strong club, and right across the board, everyone will have those moments in the next hour.
And King, you mentioned that, and sometimes it doesn't have to be words.
No.
It's just to be able to sit next to someone and spend a bit of time, that quiet time, and that can go over the next couple of hours. But it's a unique experience to sit in the rooms and experience that bond that you've just built, and then a little bit later you'll wander out onto the MCG and just have a quiet beer in the middle of the ground, and when the lights are off, and
You're spot on. You're spot on. I think that you don't need words now as teammates. Just look at each other and you've got that unity. We've done something together, something that maybe we'll never do again. We may never get this opportunity again, but it's an amazing time for the players, and I've got no doubt. You're worried all week about losing this game, really not knowing what's on the end of it, but now the realisation that you've achieved. Your year is over after winning. It's a strange feeling. Normally you lose and your year's over.
Yeah.
So I think these players just be coming to grips with what it actually means for them personally.
We know Paul Roos has gone missing, but we've found him again. He's down in the Swans rooms at the MCG, and he's with Jude Bolton and Josh Kennedy.
Yeah, good on you, boys. A couple of the lads here, Jude Bolton and Joey Kennedy. So firstly to you, Joey, number one. How does it feel? I mean, explain the emotions after the game.
At the moment, but fantastic childhood dream. Couldn't imagine this growing up. 3 years ago, couldn't imagine this, mate. So thank you very much for getting me up here, and so happy to be part of it.
Mate, thanks on behalf of all the Swans. We're glad you came up here. Jude, we just talked about it then. 05 compared to 2012.
I think probably back in 05 was the monkey off the back. 72 years was hanging over everyone in the club. This time, I think the boys were supremely confident of our game plan and just played really well.
Joe, I mean, there's a massive battle in the midfield, just a huge battle. I mean, big bodies flying, tackles going everywhere. I mean, how does it feel on the ground? Did it feel like a really physical contest?
Yeah, it did, and they were supreme midfield throughout the game. I thought, they got on top of some patches, but it was a game of momentum. We were able to wrestle it back, and happy to be on top in the end.
Joey mentioned momentum, Jude. I tell you, I've never seen it. It looked like the team would stop, and then all of a sudden, I thought halfway through the third quarter, 28 points up, I think it was. It looked like they were gone and buried, and then all of a sudden they came back and kicked 4 or 5 in a row. Did it feel on the ground that when momentum swung your way or went against you?
Especially the wind. The wind played a huge factor in the first half, and then both teams started to score against the wind, and it was just back and forth each time. So you'd go 2 goals, then back another couple. So it was unbelievable.
Now, one of the things people ask.
Two very exhausted premiership players down there with Paul Roos, and great scenes down there. We see the rooms are a chock-a-block full of family and friends and supporters, and it is, as Kingy said before, it's a magnificent 2 or 3 hour period. He's doing a little bit of overtime for us. Paul Roos, he's down the rooms again, and this time he's with a very, very proud coach, John Longmire.
I was just speaking to a couple of the boys then, Joey and Jude. I mean, it just looked like a really, really tough game.
Yeah, it was. It was a real solid. It was a grand final, and that's what the game was. Different teams had the momentum at different stages, and a lot of the stats probably weren't our way, but we were able to capitalise when we needed to, which was important.
And I guess just the guys playing their roles, it really ebbed and flowed the game. There was no question about it, but it seemed like you guys just stuck to what you wanted to do most of the game.
Yeah, we did. That's a good thing about the players. They sacrifice themselves, and it's not about them. They just need to play their roles in the team, and it's based upon their strengths, and most of the players brought their strengths today.
The other thing I thought was significant is Luke Hodge started off the back in the first quarter. They sort of had 7 defenders. You left it for a while. It probably worked in their favour. Then it worked in your favour. And then it looked like they addressed that probably after half-time.
Yeah, we thought in the first quarter, with the one, you've got to be pretty brave, I guess, to keep going up when they've got a five-man forward line, including Cyril and Buddy, and we're against the wind. So we made a few adjustments at quarter time and made it a bit more accountable, and I thought that helped. But there was clearly one scoring end today.
Just a couple of unsung players. I mean, what a story, Mike Pyke.
Yeah, you know what he was like, Roosie, when he turned up with his video showing the fact that he got a try against the All Blacks. It's an amazing story. He's a great learner and he's a great competitor.
The other one is Lewis Roberts-Thompson. I mean, people have been asking me all week, oh, geez, Lewis Roberts-Thompson, a good player on the back of last week. But when he plays his role, the history with Louis, if he plays his role in the team, he's been a really good player for the best part of 10 years. Oh,
there's no doubt. I mean, I thought last week he played his role superbly. He just did what we wanted him to do and made a contest and made Reed accountable, and I thought today he was the same. He's so flexible. You can put him at either end of the ground, you can put him in the ruck, and that really helps.
What about the Lewis Jetta run down the wing with Cyril Rioli chasing him? I mean, we've joked about it, but he has the amazing capacity to run a yard ahead of anyone that's chasing him.
He used to run the yard ahead of Kirky as well, didn't he, Roosie? So, yeah, he's got an amazing ability to do that, and, I'll have to have a look at it before I savour it, but I'd back Lewis against most blokes, maybe not Cyril.
But I guess it was one of those days. Lewis, just some really good cameos, some really important roles. Tell us about Adam Goods.
Yeah, well, Adam had a posterior cruciate, and when the word came back up that it was gone, and Nathan Gibbs, our doctor, said afterwards it was an amazing effort that he was able to get back out there, let alone contribute the way he did. And I thought he was critical the way he kept himself on. I kept on asking him how was he, and he kept on saying he was fine, no excuses. And he did a good job for us.
Yeah, look, it was just an outstanding effort. Well, mate, well done, just outstanding effort. 2012 Premiership coach, mate, fantastic. Back to you guys.